I'd love to be is in a post-truck universe. This is We Have Concerns. Hi, Jeff Cannata.
Hi, Anthony Carboni.
Hello, concerned citizens.
Anthony, you know, one of the most frequently cited psychology experiments ever, certainly most cited by me.
Mouse Utopia.
No, we're not talking about Mouse Utopia.
Are we going to talk about Mouse Utopia again?
Every single episode, you want me to talk about Mouse Utopia.
Everybody loves Mouse Utopia.
We're not doing Mouse Utopia. How many times do I have to tell you?
We already did Mouse Utopia, but I'm telling you, it's been so many years. We could revisit Mouse Utopia. We could talk. What if we were just about Mouse Utopia?
We just did a Mouse Utopia focused podcast.
Oh my gosh. Here's my new pitch for the show.
Mm-hmm.
Gimlet Media / Spotify Studios style deep dive into the Mouse Utopia. We interview the mice. We interview the descendants of the mice. We interview the architects of the city. We put like that serious podcast music underneath it. So where it's like we thought we were doing the best we could for the mice. But we were wrong.
Hi, I'm Jeff Cannata. And on this episode of Mouse Utopia, we're going to go deep on what makes mouse. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take you behind the veneer of Mouse Utopia into the places they don't want you to see. Maybe the Mouse Utopia is a mouse dystopia. Find out. Coming up.
Let me tell you something. You better head to patreon.com / we have concerns, because audio-based bits like that are not easy to do over a Zoom call. The timing's all off. We're both trying to anticipate each other. Anyway, what do you got to talk about Mouse Utopia today?
Not about Mouse Utopia. One of the, I would say probably more cited than Mouse Utopia, the psychology experiment I certainly have cited the most often. And it's one of my favorites because it seems to describe our world in shocking detail, is Dunning-Kruger. The Dunning-Kruger effect, named, of course, after David Dunning and Justin Kruger, professors of psychology at Cornell University, who published a paper, very famous paper in the 90s, that basically posited that the less you know about something, the more you think you know about it.
Right. You look at something where you have no idea about the complexities of it, and when you see it, you go, I could do that. Not only could I do that, I could probably do that better. It's the old adage. It's sort of connected to the old adage that I love, which is the world's greatest swordsman doesn't have to worry about the world's second greatest swordsman. He has to worry about the world's worst swordsman.
Right. It's this idea that the more you don't know about something, the more you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. So you just assume you know things because you don't know what you don't know. And it seems like, yeah. So it's the arrogant idiot, right?
And everything we see in society, particularly, hey, happy Threads week, not to blow up our OPSEC about where and when we record, but, looking at social media and the internet and the things that people put out into the world, you would go, yeah, people really think they're smart. And boy, when they think they're smart, they are dangerous.
Yeah. The dumbest among us think they're the smartest among us.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to describe the last decade of our existence in shocking accuracy.
Decade. Oh, baby. Yeah. More than that.
Well, more than that. True. Anyway, this is a study I have cited many, many times. And because it just feels right. It just feels like, this is we all know the arrogant idiot. We all know the person that is like,
the internet loves it, right? We love this thing. We love the Dunning-Kruger. When you see somebody post something stupid online, particularly like somebody in government, somebody in industry, somebody who's famous, you'll at least see one or two replies that say Dunning-Kruger, or to a news article about the government or something they did. Somebody will be like, Dunning-Kruger in full effect here. Like, we love it. We love it because it seems to prove itself out everywhere we go.
Yes. Well, there is a new article on The Conversation, which
never read it, but I probably already know more than them.
Yeah, this touts itself as academic rigor, journalistic flair. This is written by Eric C. Gaze, who is a senior lecturer of mathematics at Bowdoin College.
And unfortunately, we named the male gaze after him.
Yeah,
no, I don't want to put that out into the world about Eric. No, we don't know anything about Eric. We're not going to put that out into the world about Eric.
The Eric C. Gaze effect.
I'm sure Eric's a perfectly nice, perfectly wonderful person. Sorry, Eric.
He seems like a pretty introspective dude, and he has published this article that is debunking elements of the Dunning-Kruger effect, the Dunning-Kruger paper that was originally posted in the 90s. I bring this up, like I said, because I have cited Dunning-Kruger so often, and I sense it to be true, but I love when my assumptions are challenged, when information that I have taken as fact is challenged. And I think this brings up some really interesting counterpoints to the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Okay.
First of all,
feels real though, Jeff. Are you saying that we think we know everything about the Dunning-Kruger effect, and yet we actually don't know anything about the Dunning-Kruger effect, and therefore we are making bad decisions based on our misunderstanding of the Dunning-Kruger effect?
Yeah, it's like
no, that's too meta. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing
paradox.
It. It's too meta. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. It's too hat on a hat, Jeff. I refuse.
Well, let's dive into how Dunning-Kruger actually was presented originally in the 90s. Basically, Dunning and Kruger took 45 undergraduate students at Cornell University and asked them a 20-question logic test.
Now, you should know that the reason that this is so famous is that Dunning and Kruger were not professors at Cornell. They were a comedy duo.
Yeah.
They were a YouTube prank channel, and Dunning and Kruger were like, we're going to go ahead and we're going to pretend to be professors. And here's what happened. They pretended so well that honestly, they were given tenure. And that's where the Dunning-Kruger effect comes from.
They were the Jake and Luke Paul of their day, you know?
Really now, who's Luke
Paul?
Which one is Luke?
Isn't that the brother? Jake, and what's his brother's name?
So
Maximilian?
Name the four Paul brothers.
Jake, Luke, John, and Ringo.
There you go. I think you're thinking of it was either going to go biblical or Beatles, and I was like, which one is he going to do?
You know me. It's always Beatles.
It's always Beatles. No, I believe you're thinking of Logan Paul. Logan,
of course.
Logan.
How could I be so?
The Low Gang.
Yeah, yes.
It's every day, bro.
You know way more about this than you should.
I still post to YouTube, and you shouldn't. Be glad that you don't do that shit.
Yeah. Well, the Dunning and Kruger were posting to YouTube in the 90s. They were way ahead of their time.
They were so ahead of the game, baby. So they were at Cornell. They sat down these students.
45 undergraduate students, gave them a 20-question logic test, and then asked them to rate their own performance on that logic test in two different ways. They said, hey, tell me how many questions out of the 20 you got right, and then tell me how you compare to all the other people that we gave this test to, right? So they then divided those students into four groups based on their scores. Four groups. The lowest scoring quarter of the students, on average, got 10 out of 20 of the questions right. And the top scoring quarter of the students got an average of 17 out of the 20 questions right.
Okay.
Right? But both groups estimated that they got 14 of the questions right. So even the students that got an average of 17 questions right undervalued what they thought they were going to get. They thought they were going to get 14, but they actually got an average of 17. But the ones that got 10 also thought they were going to get 14. So they overestimated.
Right. And the idea here is that the smart people are worried about complications or intricacies or things that they could have missed, whereas the people who don't know as much about it are like, yeah, I basically understood what that was all about. I think I did pretty good.
Right. So basically, the lowest scoring students estimated they did better than 62% of the test takers. while the highest scoring students thought they scored better than 68%. So they're kind of in the same range of what they thought what they thought they did and what they thought they did in comparison to other students. But because the lowest scoring students were the lowest scoring students, they were the most wrong, right? They were farthest away from the truth. So basically Dunning-Kruger said, hey, if the farther you are away from being right, the more you think you are right.
Right. Okay.
Which this paper by Mr. Gaze says is the wrong conclusion to draw. He and his team say that is obvious that they would be be the people that most grossly incorrectly estimate their performance, because by definition they're the farthest away. They can only be the most wrong because they are the most wrong.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah. This all makes sense.
There's no way for the people who actually, basically everybody thinks they're above average.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who are farthest from above average are the most wrong. They went, that's the only way this could play out. There's no other way. It doesn't mean that the people who are most wrong are most deluded. It's that everybody just thinks they're above average, and the people who are most wrong are the farthest away from being above average.
I mean, that makes sense to me. I understand it, but when I look at like what Dunning and Kruger found here, and you get these people in the third quarter, I think that's probably where the idea of Dunning-Kruger comes from, is for whatever reason in the original study with Dunning and Kruger, the people who like did all right, these third quarter people were pretty, I mean, they are above average, and they guessed that they were a little above average. Is that the thing?
This is
because everybody thinks they're equally above average.
Mr. Gage thinks, or Gaze, I should say, thinks that the takeaway from Dunning-Kruger is not that the more wrong you are, the more you think you're right, which is what we've colloquially accepted it to be. His is, the takeaway should be, we all think we're above average.
We all think we're pretty good, except I keep coming back to these people in the third quarter who actually scored a little better than they thought they were, and also estimated themselves a little bit lower than everybody else did, which is where I would imagine Dunning and Kruger got their idea from, is like, well, these people are pretty good and they think that they're just a little worse than they are, but that could just be deviation of data, right?
Right. Well, the way that Gaze and his team set out to sort of disprove this or kind of debunk the data, because this has been copied over many different disciplines, not just this logic test, but all these different disciplines have come out with similar studies. He said what his team did, they created 1,154 fictional people. And they randomly assigned both a test score and a self-assessment ranking. So they basically recreated this with pure statistics, without actual human beings, but they just said random assignment of numbers. Some people did really great on the tests and thought they did terribly. Other people, just random association, random number for how you did, random number for how you thought you did.
Okay.
And then, just like Dunning-Kruger, they divided those people into quarters based on their test scores. And so because these self-assessment rankings were also randomly assigned from a score of 1 to 100, each quarter reverts to a mean of 50, just by definition, because it's purely random. So even if you separate the test scores into quadrants, the mean self-assessment will always be 50. Okay. So by definition, the bottom quarter will outperform only 12.5% of participants. But from the random the assignment of the self-assessment scores, they will consider themselves better than 50%. So there's the biggest gulf there.
Yeah.
That's an overestimation of 37.5 percentage points.
Right.
Okay? But the people who are, the people in the other quadrant, the people who actually did very well and thought they did, they are not as far away, right? So that it's exactly recreating Dunning-Kruger just with pure randomness. So you're saying the people that are farthest away because they're always going to be farthest away.
Huh. I mean, there's something in my brain that says, but if you are randomly assigning this, like, I understand what you're saying by the distribution of all this stuff, it all evens out mathematically, but I think the point of this is that it's not a random distribution, right? Like you just by randomly assigning it, even if you get the same results, isn't there an importance of the human psychology aspect of it that says we have to look at the actual distribution? You know what I mean? Like, the math of it may even out. Like the two math problems may come out with the same results, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're proving the same thing. Don't we have to look at people's self-assessment versus their intelligence in a subject and say, like, yeah, okay, this random distribution did it, but this is based on what people are actually thinking. Did they do any, like, beyond these?
Yes. So basically the statistical one was to show, like, hey, if you're drawing a conclusion based on how far away the worst performers are from reality, if you're saying, hey, the dumbest of us think we're the smartest.
Yeah.
You know, we can show that just with pure randomness. Like, that's just a function of the statistical difference between the mean and the lowest performers.
By being in a very low percentile, no matter what they think, even if they think they're slightly above, even if there's always that huger deviation, is what you're saying, because
they're farthest away. They're always going to be farthest away.
And that's always going to pump their perceived number up here.
Yeah. So they did a separate study to test the being able to adequately judge your own skill. Mm-hmm. So what they did is they gave a team of students, or a group of students, a 25 question scientific literacy test. And after answering each of the questions, students rate their own performance on each question as either nailed it, not sure, or no idea. And what they found was unskilled students, students who just did terribly and didn't know what they were doing, were pretty darn good at estimating the fact that they didn't know what they were doing.
Huh.
They said the unskilled students who scored in the bottom quarter, only 16.5% significantly overestimated their abilities. And it turns out 3.9% significantly underestimated their score. They say that means that nearly 80% of the unskilled students were good at estimating their real ability.
That's interesting. That's really interesting.
So the people who I tanked this, I had no idea they knew that they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah, I mean, thinking back to my academic days, yeah, I always knew when I did poorly.
Yeah, right. You know when you get to the history test and you don't know the answer. You know when you don't know the answer.
Here's the thing about Dunning-Kruger that we love so much, though. The reason I know that I did poorly, Jeff, is because I'm a smart guy.
Right.
Only the smart guys know when they did badly. Right. That's what we love about Dunning-Kruger, right? That's what we love
about it, is because it makes us feel good about ourselves for feeling so dumb.
Yeah. Like, boy, I fucked up that test really bad. There's no way I passed that. That means I am cool and self-aware and pretty smart. And if I had just studied this, I would have done really well, but I didn't. But I am super smart about it.
They said that the biggest takeaway, the thing that Dunning-Kruger gets absolutely correct, is that everybody thinks they're just above average.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks I'm better than most. I'm not the best. Even the people that actually were the best didn't think they were the best. But everybody thinks I'm not the worst. And in fact, I'm better than most people. You say, how did you do? Well, I didn't do great, but I did better than most people.
I think I think above and beyond Dunning-Kruger, I think we think that about most things. Like, have you ever seen those videos where these are horrible videos. I hate them, but they're so popular on the internet where like we had 5 guys come in and rate their attractiveness. And then we had 10 women come in and give us the rating that they gave those guys. And, everybody thinks they're a 6.
Right. Yeah.
You ask anybody, they're like, oh, I'm probably a 6 or a 7, I guess, in terms of attractiveness, probably a 6 or a 7. That can't be true.
Right. Like the definition of average means that cannot be true.
That simply cannot be true. I'm pretty good at this, or I think, and I even think that where it's like when I start to learn something new, even though I know I'm not good at it, the human mind goes, but I'm pretty good student. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like if like my piano lessons, if I'm doing piano lessons, I'm like, well, I'm pretty bad at the piano, but I'm probably picking it up pretty fast compared to other people. Even though I'm just beginning, I'm probably like really good for a beginner. And there's something about the human mind that's just like, I'm not bad, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not bad. Well, what is that?
I would submit that there is maybe even a completely different thing at play here, because I've always interpreted Dunning-Kruger and the just the comedic obviousness of it when we see these buffoons in the main character of The Office, for example, Michael Scott.
Mm-hmm. I've never seen The Office. What is that about?
It's about America. Anyway, we all recognize that confident buffoon, right. The person who just knows everything, but that they're dumb and they don't know what they're talking about. So we recognize that thing. But
and the idea of failing up.
Right. Yeah, we've all experienced it, so it feels right. But I would submit that this notion of above average isn't speaking to that confident idiot thing. I suspect, and this is just an intuition of mine, but I suspect it has more to do with this more complex psychological position that we have to put ourselves in, where we can't declare ourselves the best, but we also, for our own ego and our own self-confidence, we can't declare ourselves the worst.
Yeah.
There's just this like sweet spot of, well, I'm better than most of the people. I'm not the greatest.
I know, but
it just feels the most.
I'm somewhere at the top of the middle.
Yeah. I'm not gonna brag, but I'm also not gonna bury myself.
I think it's connected to how much you care about something. So follow me here. I want to think that I am above average for a piano student because I want to learn to play the piano, and I want to think that I'm learning the piano pretty well. And I want to be having the progress that I want to have that says you're going to get to the level that you want to get at. You're not bad at this. You're not talentless at this. You have some aptitude for this. Keep going. Whereas like if you took me bowling, I'd just be like, yeah, man, I'm bad at bowling. I don't care. Right. I don't care if I'm good at bowling.
Right.
Like that doesn't matter to me. So you can tell me that I'm bad at bowling and I can be realistic about it. But I think the more that you care about something, and I think that's also something that makes the Dunning-Kruger effect so interesting to us and feels so real to us, is we often apply it to people who want something really badly and are clearly unfit for it.
Right. Yes.
When we apply it to politicians, when we apply it to CEOs, when we apply it to, there's something comforting and good about it, because it says like, oh, this guy made it to where he is thinking he's the smartest guy in the world, and he actually sucks. And he doesn't even know that he sucks. And there's something very comforting to us about that.
Yeah. And when it's wrapped up in identity, right? When it's wrapped up in, I am the CEO, I am the president, I am the whatever it is.
I am the law. I am Iron Man.
Yes. I am what I am.
I am what I am, and that's all what I am.
The other thing I think is so brilliant about this paper, this recently published paper by Eric C. Gaze, is how, in Dunning-Kruger, they say, tell me how many questions you got right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that particular phrasing leads us to put ourselves about average, rate ourselves about average.
Right.
But what Eric C. Gaze and his team did is define it as nailed it, not sure, not how many questions did you get right. Tell me what you think you did. Nailed it, not sure, or no idea. Mm-hmm. Right? I think that removes this, whatever that imposed feeling of I got to be sort of above average. If you can be more honest somehow in just qualifying it as with a descriptor instead of a number. If you can say I tanked that. Right. How many do you think you got right? Probably, I don't know, probably over half.
But also, but also, middle third feels good, right? Like if you're asked to estimate something, putting yourself in the middle third feels good because there's space for you to be pretty good or not great and not toot your own horn, but also not be like not down on yourself. I think there are, like you're saying, there's so many issues of self-worth that go into this, and not only self-worth, but the idea of how we are publicly perceived. Like when you said, I don't want to say I'm the best at this, like that really like put a pin in something for me. There is that thing of being gracious about a compliment, being not trying to sound too egotistical, not trying to sound, but at the same time, when we think about people who are the best at things, let's take one of your big idols, the purple one, Prince. Mm-hmm. Prince always said that they were the best. Prince was like, I'm the best. You look at a Michael Jordan. I am the best. And I think there is something about this, and this goes a little beyond the Dunning-Kruger thing, but I think this is something interesting that we have to wrap our heads around and we have to figure out how to deal with. I think what this says to me, my takeaway from this is we would probably do better at everything in our lives if we allowed ourselves to be realistic about our aptitude and skill. If we allowed ourselves,
difficult thing to do. It's so difficult.
It is difficult. And is it difficult?
Dispassionately assess that?
Is it difficult? I mean, it's difficult because of ego. Is it difficult because of culture? Is it difficult because of society? Like, what makes it difficult? And what's wrong with like if you're somebody like a Steve Martin or a Chris Rock or somebody like that, and you go, yeah, man, I was probably the best stand-up there was at the time. You know what I mean? Like Steve Martin and Chris Rock have both said, yeah, I was absolutely the best stand-up. There were other people that were great, but you can look at it and you can see quantifiably, I was number one in the world.
Yeah.
It's the same with these athletes or these musicians. I think there's a certain amount of like, people see that as ego, but when you drill deeper into interviews with those people, they always talk about, here's what I was having problems with. Here's what I didn't do right. Here's what I had to change. Here's a big block that I had. Here's when I wasn't the best and what I did to become the best. Like I saw a thing with an Olympic athlete. I believe she was a gymnast, and she was doing an interview about her coach, who was like, you've got to, if you're going after a dream, you got to remember the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds is if you're going after a dream, a third of the time you're going to feel like you're really nailing it. A third of the time you're going to feel like you're doing horribly at it. And a third of the time you're going to feel fine. And if you're feeling those things in an equal spread of thirds, you're probably heading towards your dream. Like there's something about getting this positive and negative thinking out of our heads and just saying, realistically, I am the 12th best violinist. And I'd love to be the 11th best violinist. I know who the 11th best violinist is, and here's how they're better than me. You know what I mean? And like,
well, I think the harder end of it is, you're doing the piano lessons. Mm-hmm. You don't probably ever think you're going to play Carnegie Hall, but you also can't admit to yourself that you're terrible, or it'll be incredibly demoralizing, right? There's something about our psychology that says, I can't tell myself that I'm awful at this, or else it will feel pointless, right? Mm-hmm. The notion, I don't necessarily need to be the Michael Jordan of piano playing, but I also have to believe that I will be able to have a certain level of competency. I have to put myself at just above average, or else it feels like I'm just wasting my time.
I just want to say I love the idea of saying the Michael Jordan of piano playing, where somewhere in the world, the greatest piano player in the world is just like, fucking hell. Nobody knows my name.
Yeah.
I'm the Michael Jordan of piano. I'm the Michael Jordan of piano.
Yeah.
Why isn't he the Vanessa Schuler of basketball?
Meanwhile, the Engelbert Humperdinck of basketball is out there.
Yeah, like what the fuck? But and I think that's the other thing too, is the ability to be.
I said Engelbert Humperdinck, so you can drink. I know every episode I have to bring up Humperdinck. So
there it is. There's your one. I think there's something. Fuck, what was I going to say?
Sorry.
That's okay. It's important to point out the Humper drink. The Humper drink in every episode. It's a long standing. So we've done 740 episodes, and there's been a Humper drink in every one. And if you missed it, you weren't listening. And that means you're on the lower percentage of good listeners. That's what that means. I think it's like you're saying, I don't need to be the greatest piano player in the world, but I think we need to be okay with being bad at things that we love. I think we need to be okay with that. I think we need to be okay with saying, hey, this is a hobby, or this is something that I enjoy. So I'm just doing it because I enjoy it. And if I get better, I get better. And if I don't, I don't. But there is this sort of like baked in fear of, like you're saying, if I fail, then I'm a waste. Then it was a waste of time. Yeah, I wasted time if I'm not good. And that's something that gets kind of like pushed into us because we don't have infinite time. Right. And so there's this idea of like, well, if we're not min-maxing every day, why would I take up this when these are the things that I'm already good at? And I think that plagues a lot of people at a lot of points in our lives, right? Like I see a lot of people, people call it the quarter life, midlife crisis, return of Saturn, whatever you want to call it, where people are just in this thing because they want to change everything up. And they're like, but I can't change everything up because here are the things that I'm good at. And it's like, buddy, you can change everything up. You can absolutely do it. Like, I understand it's not that easy. Like, I know when I say it, it's, I'm making it sound too simple, but you can, and we shouldn't be afraid to, Yeah,
I agree. I think it's a hard thing to look at yourself honestly and assess your proficiency in any given thing, especially if you're wrapping up your identity in it. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a hard thing to do, but I think it's healthy if you can get there. I'm curious what you think about the notion that seems to be put forward by this paper that people who are unskilled know it. Right. That's basically what's being challenged here. As Dunning-Kruger says, the most unskilled among us are the most ignorant to their lack of skill. And what this paper is saying is, a lot of people underestimate their skills. They put themselves above average, which is, a lie to yourself in a large sense. But what Dunning-Kruger said is not necessarily true. Unskilled people know it.
So I think this goes back to self-worth a lot. And it goes into like a lot of complicated things, right? Like I certainly have known when I am bad at stuff. Walking into a math class my entire life was essentially walking into a room where I knew for the next hour I was just going to be punched in the gut. You know, there are things that I know that I'm bad. Like, I knew, you know, there are things where it's just like, I knew that I was bad at them, and I always have. And even in the beginning of like my career, when I was, you know, trying to host things and I would go home and I would think more about the stuff that I fucked up than the stuff I got right. Mm-hmm. And that went away as I got better at my job, but that also went away as I got, you know, I just got better about treating myself better. But the big variable of that, again, I guess when I'm talking around, is it also comes down to the sort of ego that you have. I was the sort of kid that would always go home and focus on the shit that I did that was wrong. How did I fuck this up? Whether it was a social interaction, a class, you know, whatever it was, it's like, how did I do that wrong? And I used to say, when I was younger, I'm no more talented or better than anybody else at anything I do. The only difference between me and them is like, I will bang my head against the wall until I get it. You know what I mean? Right. Which is just a way of like torturing yourself, really. Yeah. There's a healthier way to do it. But so I've always known when I'm bad at something, but I have also always grown up being told that makes me actually a smarter boy than most boys. Right? Because the Dunning-Kruger is always there.
That we're both above average.
Oh, we're both very smart boys. We're both very smart boys. I think everybody that listens to this show is very smart. But
oh, yes. That's actually how we know you're smart, is that you listen to this show. You know what makes you even smarter? Supporting us on Patreon.
Patreon.com/we have concerns. No, I think I've always known when I've done poorly. And I think I've always known when I'm bad at something.
Do you think most people do? Do you think that is common?
If I'm trying to do what we are talking about here and remove my feeling of specialness and being a special boy, if I think so, most people probably think so. I think that there are people, I think that most people know when they're screwing something up, you know? And
I agree with that. I think qualifying it not as a number, but as like, how did you feel you did? Here's the thing that I use Dunning-Kruger as shorthand for, that I don't think this paper necessarily addresses directly, that I think is still a phenomenon that needs a name, which is, I think there is this thing that is observable to me, and it's anecdotal, but it's observable. That is people that know a little bit about something thinking they know a lot about something. You know, I read one article about coronavirus and I know as much as Anthony Fauci.
Right.
Entire life.
I am no longer an expert on viruses. I am now an expert on submersibles.
Exactly.
Right.
It is. I read an article or two, and therefore my knowledge base is equivalent to the people who spent their entire careers at the highest levels.
I'm probably more informed than most people because I read the entire article. Right. Most people don't even do that. I read the entire article, so I'm probably more informed than most people. But that is something that I love. Is I love the idea of like, and I understand it. There's this idea of an article comes out and it says specific things, and then they go to the expert and they said, well, article says these things. Thinking that the expert has not thought of those things, thinking that the expert is not already ahead of that article or whatever. Right. But the reason why stuff like that exists is, and this gets into something else, this comes into confirmation bias, right? And this comes into also not just confirmation bias, but a feeling of distrust for large corporate entities, a feeling of distrust for things that happen behind closed doors where we can't see the inner workings of them. I think that's a much more complicated thing. And there is a bit of Dunning-Kruger in it, right? When somebody goes to Fauci and says, well, I know more about this than you do. Or, like, why didn't you think about this if you're such a smart guy? Not knowing that he's got a report on his desk that's 300 pages, right? But the idea is, maybe there is, particularly if you don't believe in something somebody says or you don't like what they're saying, the idea is maybe they missed something. Because what I believe is so central to what I want and who I am, like we're talking about, that maybe they missed this. And it's like, aha. Or maybe they're lying. Maybe they're lying because they have something else in mind, right? There's an amount of distrust that comes into that too.
There's certainly a lot of these institutions that have failed people, and I think that there's a lot of distrust that comes from that. Mm-hmm. But I also think that there is a complete misunderstanding of what expertise is.
Yes,
we've lost this understanding of how expertise is acquired. Right. And what the level to which experts know more than you. Right. I think true expertise in a field is earned over decades, not years, and that is something I don't think people appreciate in the era of the internet where all knowledge is out there somewhere. Just have to get it. I don't think people appreciate the level of study and commitment that is required for true expertise. And I think that's where a lot of this comes from too.
Well, yeah, for sure. And there's this, this kind of goes away from what we're talking about, but there's this book, a very famous book called How to Read a Book. And it was written by Mortimer Adler and Charles Van Doren. Mortimer Adler was one of the people who put together the very famous series called The Great Books, which is like that 52 volume set that's supposed to give you like a classical education. And one of the things that Adler and Van Doren talk about in How to Read a Book is the idea of syntopical reading and analytical reading. Right. So the idea, and that's what expertise comes down to. We are in a world where, like you're saying, I can look up anything at any time. The beautiful thing about the internet and about social media is it's perfect for debating because it's debating in asynchronous space. It's debating like playing chess by mail back in the day before there was internet, right? So where like I can mail you my chess move, and then you have all the time in the world to think about your chess move before you mail me yours back. So when you see two people in an argument on social media, what you're seeing is somebody makes a point, the other person goes and looks up that point, finds something that matches their rebuttal, and then puts that in, right? And what you're doing is you're finding individual facts. What people don't do enough, particularly when they feel attacked or threatened, because it's tough to do this, is they don't take the time to take in all of the information and all of the viewpoints and really synthesize them. And that's what expertise is, right? Expertise is the ability of like, if you get asked 40 random questions about 40 different bits of that, it's not just that you're able to answer those questions. It's that you're able to look at those questions and be like, oh, this is what people are getting at. And I know that this is what people are getting at because I have an expertise on this subject. So I'm going to let you know. We don't really do much of that, and we don't respect that very much anymore.
Certainly don't do it here on this podcast.
No,
I recognize the irony of us talking about expertise on a podcast where we read an article and then pontificate on it for an hour.
What is my expertise? If I could say I knew about anything as much as like anybody else, I don't think I have one. It would be something ridiculous. It would be something really ridiculous. Like I probably know more about like the history of like Sega or point and shoot cameras from the 80s. It's like really dumb shit. Like I don't, and even then, like if I met somebody who actually knew about that stuff, I'd probably get blown out of the water. I don't know that I'm an expert on anything, but that's probably what makes me a very smart boy.
Because you're not. See? Brilliant. I'm not an expert. I'm above average on everything, but that's about
You're a film guy. What part of film do you think? Because I don't listen to the Filmcast and I never will.
Sure. How would you?
What would you say on the Filmcast? Because everybody, when you're hosting something with three other people, you all kind of fall into your areas of expertise. What is the thing that people go to you for on the show?
Limericks? I think less and less so, because in the last 10 to 15 years, many more people have gotten to be much better experts at this than me. But there was a period where I think I probably knew more about Marvel Comics than most humans.
Which puts you in a very special place 10 years ago when Marvel Studios was like taking off.
Now that it's ingrained in pop culture in a way that it never was when I was growing. I mean, obviously it was always there, but people have a deeper understanding and knowledge base about the history of Marvel Comics and all the characters because they're, incentivized because of the success of the films and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But when it was all starting up, like I was a kid who obsessed about that in the 80s and 90s. And read everything and was just obsessed by, about Marvel Comics. And so I think there was a brief window in time where I was a unique expert in that field where there were very few.
And the
now
expertise
there's way more
on that. Yeah. The expertise like we're talking about with this is because you read the comics and because you were already a film critic and because you understood the movie industry, you were probably positioned to be like, well, I think next they're going to introduce this thing, or they're going to go in this direction. They'll probably use this storyline, but they'll change this because that won't work in a movie. And you're right. There's a lot of people who do that armchair now, but
well, but there are podcasts that I did at that time where I get it right. Right. And I don't think there were a lot of people equipped to do that at that time. Right now, it's completely different landscape. Now everybody does that, right? Everybody is armed with that stuff.
So you could get fired at any time.
I've really become redundant. We've learned.
More like redundant Kruger.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what else I think you and I are both experts at this sort of podcasting. Like there are hours put in that I think result in expertise in us in how to do this. That is sort of, it's harder to pin down. It's a more ineffable kind of skill set, but I think there are
put us in a room with fucking Ira Glass and he'll mop the floor with us.
It's so true.
You know what I mean?
It's very, very true. Yeah. We're above average is what I'm saying. We're
above average in most things. I mean, what do you think, concerned citizens? Are you above average at most things? Probably. I think if there's one thing we learned from this study, it's that we're all probably above average in most things. And that's mathematically sound. I did not listen to most of what Jeff said. Let us know how you feel about this. A great place to share your above averageness with other above average people, as we mentioned, is on the Discord, which you can get access to at patreon.com/wehaveconcerns.
You actually, by law, are required to be above average in order to be in the Discord. And you'll notice if you look to your left, look to your right in the Discord, you'll notice everybody there wildly outdoes the mean.
It's like, the Escher drawing of the stairs that only continue to go up. That's what happens in the Discord. You look and it's like, oh, that person's even more above average. And then you look, it's like, oh, that person's even more above average until we're all just ascending like beautiful special angels.
And you can be part of it for as low as $1 a month. At patreon.com/wehaveconcerns. You want to support the show at a higher level? Oh, you get even better stuff, including bonus episodes, bonus video, bonus audio, the beginnings of episodes that you only hear the last snippet of. You get that as a whole episode in your feed. Check it all out by going to patreon.com/wehaveconcerns.